Welcome back, recruit, to another Rebel Rant. As I'm sure you've heard by now, CG has announced the release of Jedi Knight Luke Skywalker. Unfortunately, it is not the quite so positive and hopeful news that so much of the community has been waiting for the last 4.5-5 years. And there are some reasons for that, so let's kind of dive into it a little bit here and have a talk about it. Now, there are other channels that are doing videos focusing specifically on Luke's kit, and I'm not gonna rehash all of that in this video. This one's going a little bit deeper with the whole situation and whatnot. And first thing I'd like to talk about are the character tags for Jedi Knight Luke. So this has been something of a thing going back all the way to Commander Luke Skywalker. And so as I'm sure you know, CLS does not have a Jedi tag, even though he's wielding a lightsaber and clearly using Force abilities. So if he's not considered some sort of Jedi at that point, then why is he wielding a lightsaber? And on top of that, why is he wearing the uniform that he was wearing as he would be considered as a Jedi Padawan at that point? So a Jedi Padawan is still a Jedi. So it would make sense to have given him a Jedi tag. Now, if they did not want to consider him a Jedi, then why would they not have given him, say, like the flight uniform that he wore in the movie, and maybe just wield a blaster? That's like, honestly, from a logical standpoint, that would have made more sense with the character name of Commander Luke Skywalker. And it really just didn't make any sense to make him a Jedi type character with that title and have that Rebel tag and not the Jedi tag. It just would have made a whole lot more sense. And on top of that, if they had turned him into more of a pilot Luke instead of a Jedi training Luke, they also could have given him his own X-Wing at that point. It would have fit in better with the Rebellion type fleets, and Wedge and Big specifically. They really could have done some fun things with that. Now, if you're a fan of the original trilogy, you know that Luke did not necessarily go after Vader as a rebel, even though he was a rebel throughout the entire movie. He specifically went after Vader as a Jedi. Whether his training was completed or not, a Jedi Padawan in training is still a Jedi. There really isn't a whole lot of logic to that. To the structure of CLS. And if you compare that to Jedi Knight Luke, you also see that he has no Rebel tag. And once again, this really just doesn't make a lot of sense. He was at that point a Jedi Knight, but he was also still a rebel. He was still fighting on the side of the rebellion. And so it just honestly, it just doesn't make a whole lot of logical sense there. And as you can see, the synergy suggestions are with 3 Galactic Republic characters and only 1 original trilogy character. There are plenty of OT characters in the game already. It would make great sense for them to build something that synergizes with the OT characters. And now, granted, they're suggestions and not like necessarily hard requirements. But again, why would they make those suggestions? From a logical standpoint and from the Star Wars mythology, it really just doesn't make any sense. So, some arguments might be made where they made these tags to fit the kit and whatnot. But again, that's really just an excuse more than anything. If you're going to design a character within a game like this, you really need to put the effort in to design that kit, design the character, apply the right tags that make sense within the original stories to fit together. That's just common sense, if you ask me. And then if you want to take a look back at the CLS event, that was a New Hope event. It started off on Tatooine, led to the Death Star, led to their escape from the Death Star, and going back to before, that would have been much better suited to a pilot Luke with a blaster pistol, or even like some sort of Jedi training Luke. When you take into account the lightsaber training session that he had with Ben on the Falcon. So from a purely logical standpoint within the boundaries of the original movies, I mean, that simply would have made so much more sense. And then if you take a look at the Jedi Knight Luke event, it crosses from the Empire into Return of the Jedi. This is clearly they seem to have designed this event to be an Empire Strikes Back story event, but it results in a Return of the Jedi Luke character. So in reality, this event would have been far better suited, much better fit for the Commander Luke Skywalker character with a different name. They could have given him a name such as Jedi Training Luke, much akin to the Jedi Training Rey. That would have been completely logical and much, much better suited. It just seems like there have been a lot of missed opportunities to start with, and whoever has been designing these characters and events, they really don't seem to be matching the Luke characters to the actual events within the original trilogy. And if you take a look at, let's take the Rey characters for example. There are 3 Reys in the game so far. The original Scavenger Rey, it's a common character, simple to unlock. And then you get to the legendary Rey, Jedi Training. It starts off at Jakku, takes you to the Starkiller base, and to finally escaping the Starkiller base, which there's a couple points on that. It actually does follow the flow of the movie which leads to that character. So it is a little more logical as far as Jedi Training Rey goes, and the events within the movie. But at the same time, she doesn't really get into some legitimate Jedi training until the Rise of Skywalker. So again, it's not quite fitting in with the actual movie events, even though they do a little bit better job of it perhaps. And one thing they did do is they skipped over Han's death in the event. There was no cutscene, there was no animation, whatnot. They just skipped right over it. And that whether you like the movie or not, the point is that was another missed opportunity within the event. They could have definitely done something with that, especially considering the fact that the final Tier 7 battle was fairly basic. Granted, not as basic as rock, paper, scissors, but it really wasn't a whole lot to it from what I've seen in unlocked videos. And it's just, once again, it's just a missed opportunity and something they could have done quite a bit more with. Regardless of whether or not you're a fan of the movies or Rey or whatnot, that's with this conversation, that is besides the point. And then you get to Galactic Legends Rey. So she had 13 character requirements just to unlock the event. And then when you get into the event, only 6 of those characters are actually needed. This did not make a lot of people happy. And I have no intention of ever going for Galactic Legends Rey, but that doesn't make me happy either. That's just it was pretty mind-blowing there, finding out about that one. And, you know, if we're being honest here, the event was a disaster. But from what I've seen, at least it did seem to follow the right movie scenes to an extent. And then the last few tiers were just the exact same thing over and over again. So, once again, it was just a poor design overall. They only put enough effort in for the first few tiers, and then just who knows what happened at that point. It's almost as if they just gave up at that point. And with the Galactic Legends Rey character design, her kit design, she's very overpowered. She dominates everybody. She's difficult to defeat. Unless maybe you're a Kraken or a whale and you've got a full roster of relict geared up characters and whatnot. The average person's not going to be able to defeat her. And, you know, so, you know, with the Galactic Legends Kylo, you know, he actually seemed to be quite a bit more balanced and definitely weaker than Rey. Now they've buffed him up recently, and they kind of seem to have been going overboard in the other direction now. Where a better solution would have been to nerf Rey's kit in some way to make her, you know, a little less dominating over like everybody, including the only other Galactic Legend. But that was what they decided to go with. So now, just so we're, you know, clear on this, I don't expect perfection. That's not the issue. There's gonna be mistakes, there's gonna be fumbles, whatnot. That's just a fact of life, fact of being human. However, these have been some pretty major missed opportunities, along with some very poor designs for, you know, especially for Luke here. The character tags, the event locations within the game compared to within the movies, they're really not matching up like they should. And after Jedi Knight Luke, I mean, what is left after that for Luke Skywalker? He's a legendary character, which is fine, but with the introduction of the Galactic Legends, personally, I really expected him to be a Galactic Legend and to be one of the most powerful characters in the game. So it is honestly a bit surprising that they've gone this route, because Jedi Knight Luke is unlikely to match GL Rey or Kylo, even though he really should. He should be at least as powerful, if not more powerful, than either of them. And CG promised as much back in the day from everything that I've heard. They promised that Jedi Knight Luke would be the most powerful character upon release. And for anybody that says it's not a big deal, I'm sorry, but your word matters. If you make a promise like that, you need to stick to it. Especially when so many of the fans are expecting it regardless. So it just looks like CG really just doesn't care about Luke that much specifically. And they do seem to be pushing Rey, Kylo, you know, the sequel trilogies over everything else. You know, the fact that, you know, the first two Galactic Legends are Rey and Kylo, and then they immediately release Jedi Knight Luke. And I use, you know, immediately in relative terms because this is the first major thing that they've announced since the Galactic Legends. And he's not a Galactic Legend himself. It just, you know, I mean, it's pretty obvious that they're pushing the sequel trilogy over literally everything else in the Star Wars mythology. And then in general, they're rushing the character and event development. There's a lack of logical cohesiveness between the characters, the tags, and the actual movie events. This is a pretty big problem, especially for legitimate fans of the Star Wars universe. You know, the events matter. The cohesiveness and continuity between the characters and the events and the movies, they matter. We don't want these stories and these characters chopped up and just mixed all together. We want what we know about the movies. and the stories and the characters. We want those things because that's what makes us love these characters to begin with. And if you're not holding true to the original events and the original characters, then you're creating something new and something different that we don't know, that we're not expecting, and that we don't accept. So at this point, it seems pretty clear that however the company started this game, they made it's pretty obvious at this point that they now covet revenue over quality. It is a $1 billion game, and yet they can't seem to afford to take the time to do it right, to do the characters justice, to do the events justice, to do the stories justice, to do the players justice. And this has been going on for a few years, as evidenced by the CLS character development, not just the last 6 months. So whoever is calling the shots over a CG, it just seems like they don't really care about the Star Wars mythology. They seem to care more about slapping characters and events together that don't quite match up with the movies. And you kind of got to ask, are there Kathleen Kennedy clones running CG at this point? And yeah, I'd like to make a point that I had a completely different video put together for this Rebel Rant. And I had it converting to video. I was very close to uploading it. And while it was converting, I kept digging because I wanted to make sure I had it right. I discovered a fatal flaw in the video. Now, as disappointing as that was, instead of trying to salvage it and kind of shoehorn it and smash it into something that might trick people into thinking it was a legitimate video, I scrapped it. I scrapped the entire video and started this one. Because that's what needs to be done. If you're putting together a product and you discover there's something wrong with that product, the right thing to do is to scrap it and start over. Look at Thomas Edison. He failed 1,000 times over before finally discovering the right filament that would produce a light bulb. A working light bulb. At this point, it seems like CG will slap anything together and push it to release. And it kind of boggles the mind a bit. It's a $1 billion game. So why are they in such a rush? And as far as the last 6 months go, yeah, we understand they're reworking the basic programming foundation of the game, which is great. Don't get me wrong. It's great that they're taking that action. But these other issues are different. That is a different story altogether from these other issues. The fact that CG would take the time to do this right in regards to the programming foundation of the game, but then they would turn around and slap these characters and events together and rush them out the door for release. It's contradictory by its very nature. And it also just goes to show that in spite of being such a successful game, for some reason, it's not enough money for them. For some reason, they seem kind of desperate to bring in more revenue. And it just begs the question why. So, don't get me wrong. I'm trying to be relatively positive and whatnot. I love the game overall. The problem, the thing is, I'm done spending money unless and until CG gets its house in order. Especially regarding the targeted ban of Arnold T-101. To be perfectly honest, I have no confidence in the Jedi Knight Luke event. Not terribly happy with how it's been put together and how the character's been built. I'm not very confident in the character. It should have been a no-holds-barred meta character. And because of these issues, I just have no real confidence in future plans for any other potential Luke characters or large part of the game in general. CG seems to be more concerned with cash grabs rather than the quality of the characters and the events that are logical and cohesive within the boundaries of the movie mythology. And they do seem to be pushing the sequel trilogy over everything else, which is disappointing because it's a very expansive universe, very big universe, and it's disappointing that they're pushing one thing over other things that have actually been around for a very long time. So, and obviously they've been working on Jedi Knight Luke for a while if they're this close to releasing them. But the simple fact is, based on what they've revealed so far, they could have done better. And, the timing is definitely up for question with the recent Arnold band scandal. No official response from CG, but then this Crumb puzzle is released, which, it's my understanding, Crumb hasn't done a puzzle in over a year. So the question is why? But then all of a sudden, here's a new one. What that tells me is that they're hoping to distract from the scandal and other issues and convince the community to forget all about everything while spending more money. And so it's just, stuff to think about. For me, it's pretty disappointing. Like I said, I do enjoy the game. I love playing the game. I love the community. I love my guild. And the fact that CG would handle the mythology of the universe like this, the characters, the way that they have, it's very disappointing to say the least. So I will continue to play free to play and have as much fun with the game as possible without spending any more money for the foreseeable future. I hope that a lot of you feel the same way, because the only way that CG will respond and make any meaningful change is if this game community unites in such a manner. And money is the only language that they really seem to understand. So, as unfortunate as that is, that just seems to be where we're at. Thank you for watching this video. I just want to thank you for taking the time to listen to this rant. I'll see you in the cantina, recruit. This is Rebel Squadron out.